We're character building today. Good afternoon. It is almost 3 p.m. and we're gonna build some characters today. We're gonna create some trauma for my poor little babies that I'm gonna be writing about for the next couple of months. And I'm gonna talk you through how I character build and the questions I ask myself, some of the boxes I like to check as I come up with the characters that are going to be telling this story. Okay, here's my snack. It's half of this citrus loaf that I got at a cafe this morning and it tastes delicious. And then the candle we are working with, lotus flower. It was $3 at Target like 2 years ago and I'm just now working my way through it. We get her going. I love a scent. I'm really excited. I already have my two main characters and I need a decent amount more to go. Specifically, I need their 3 like adventuring buddies. I'm gonna give a very quick breakdown of what we're working with because I talk a little bit about my plot in a video that's already posted on my channel, which is world building, and I will talk more about it in my outlining video. I'm still kind of figuring out how to toe that line between wanting to tell you guys things and wanting to talk about them out loud, but also not wanting to spoil things or give away ideas or all that stuff. So this is my work in progress that I'm referring to as Lady in Waiting, even though that's not really the premise anymore. I guess it like technically is. We have a princess whose name I'm not happy with. At the moment, her name's Edith and her nickname is Edie. And I just don't really like it, but I've not sat and thought longer about the names that I might like. So we're just leaving that there. And then we have her Lady in Waiting who eventually there's gonna be a little something something. Currently, I'm working with fantasy and then romance is like the B plot. So there's gonna be some flirting, there's gonna be some tensions, but maybe they'll kiss this book. Who knows? Not me. So we have her Lady in Waiting who comes to the princess's kingdom as a gift from the person that the princess is currently betrothed to, who's a prince in a different kingdom. I worked on background for the princess. I've worked on background for Ryan, who is the Lady in Waiting. R-H-I-A-N, Ryan, Lady in Waiting. Now I need to figure out who else I need to create before I start this book. I have a habit of wanting to like dive in a little too deep from the start, which is, I don't think is a bad thing. I like having a lot of context. I like knowing everything about my characters before I start writing, but I do want to leave some room for plot-driven decisions and things that I don't know about my characters yet, because I feel like I know I will learn things as I'm writing, and I will reach crossroads and I will have to make decisions for them as I'm writing. So I can only do so much to start, but I do want to go through some of the questions that I ask as I'm creating characters. Okay, we are going to start with my princess. I'm just going to go through, not everything about her, but I'm going to go through the questions that I asked as I was creating her backstory, creating who she is as a person. So I start I ask myself a lot of questions and I start literally with who is she? I go into family. I'm trying to decide, does she have any siblings? If she does, what are the relationships that she has with her siblings? Are her parents alive? Obviously, she's royalty, so we have a king and a queen. And going off of that, what are her views towards leading? I have it set that she is in line for the throne, and I think she has a decent amount of power. She has studied, she's a strategist, she cares about her kingdom and like politically wants to lead. And going off of that, I have to ask the question of how does she feel about being betrothed to some dude a different realm over? This question I took from the craft book Story Genius by Lisa Crone. What is her misunderstanding? In Story Genius, it is discussed that the main character of a story has some kind of large misunderstanding, and you have to go into the book thinking about what is the one thing that's so big and important that they believe so truly that actually is a lie. And so I've thought a little bit about this in terms of my main character, and I have a couple different ideas. Some of them are a little more theoretical, like only bad people can do bad things. There's also some that are a little more planted in reality, like believing that a certain kingdom doesn't exist anymore, or believing that certain people in certain kingdoms are a certain way. I could possibly fall back on the idea of mistrusting somebody in her family or in her kingdom. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm working through that one. I'm not super looks focused in my books, but I do like to get kind of a general gauge of a vibe. And so I do think that my princess is going to be femme presenting, and she's got some muscles. She can fight. I kind of think a little bit about ethnicity, only because in this book specifically, I have 4 different realms. If you watch my world building video, I go into it a little bit more. I have 4 different realms, and I think each of them have kind of a different ethnicity. And so I have to pick what they're going to look like. But going off of vibes, I like to give my characters birth charts, like in astrology. I don't give them a full birth chart. I'll usually do maybe like a big 3, maybe dabble in 6 of them. As someone who has a general understanding of astrology and how the planets and the signs represent themselves in correlation with each other and in different houses, it can help me form an understanding of who this person is at their core, how they're going to interact with others, how they're going to approach situations. And it can be a nice fallback in terms of consistency. For example, if I decide that one of my characters is a Taurus, then if I reach a point where I'm not necessarily sure what decisions they might make in a certain moment, I can think back to, okay, well, you made them a Taurus, so they're probably not going to be super impulsive, but they're definitely going to stick to their guns once they've decided. It's just kind of nice. I know some people will do like Enneagrams and stuff like that, but I think playing around with astrology can be fun. But kind of picking whatever like personality test was your favorite growing up and doing that for your character, I think can be really beneficial in getting a complete understanding of who they are. If anyone's wondering, I think my princess is going to be a Sagittarius. Let's go fire signs. On this character sheet, I also went into weaknesses. So just thinking about the things that we might have some trouble with, things that might cause trouble because of my character, or ways in which they could get themselves into trouble. And then favorite weapon. This was a fun one because, you know, every fantasy character has their weapon of choice. And I'm creating this one as someone who was raised to fight and knows how to work her way around a sword or a dagger or a crossbow. I think she's pretty well rounded in terms of that, but I have her favorite weapon being a staff, and I'm excited about that. We're gonna, they have magic powers, and we're gonna play around with that a little bit. I talk a little bit more about that as well in my world building, but all of my realms have like different elemental magic systems, and everyone that we're gonna be working with in my book has some form of magic. Some a little bit more basic than others, but everyone in this world can do basic magic. Something I also really want to make sure I'm considering is how the political status of the varying kingdoms and the varying realms and their interactions with each other affect these characters. At the moment, I don't think that there's been a lot of war in the lifetime of my princess. That could change. I'm still kind of working that out. But right now, I don't think there's been a lot of war in her lifetime, which means she likely has a decent amount of her family still alive. And she also has a little bit more of an idealistic viewpoint towards the world. Whereas I have a different character that I'm working on who has seen more things. Therefore, they're going to react differently to the world and to the princess, and I think some of their interactions with each other will be very interesting because they're both coming from very different perspectives. Now, in my title, I did promise to traumatize some of my characters, so we're gonna work through that because, as I said, in a fantasy war book, there's going to be some trauma, and some of them will have traumatic backstories, and then some of them I think will be dealt some not very fun hands, unfortunately, by myself. So I'm gonna work through building one of my characters right now. I have to pick which one it is. I'm definitely gonna work on one of our adventuring buddies because a large part of my plot is that they're going on a quest. Not necessarily self-chosen, but they're going on a quest. And I need to figure out who they're going on this quest with. They meaning my princess and the lady in waiting. I think there will be three more of them. So a 5-person quest total. So yeah, I'm gonna snack a little. I'm gonna work on that and I will come back with some thoughts and opinions. I will also be listening to music that I cannot play for you because copyright, but I will show you what I'm listening to. At some point, I will make a playlist that kind of correlates to the vibes of this book, but I'm not that far yet. That might be a project for my outlining video where where I add some songs to a playlist, and maybe I'll share it with you and we can have a fun little time on Spotify. That actually was easier than I thought. I just named my 3 adventurers. I'd already kind of come up with the basic idea of who has what powers, the general vibe of the character in relation to the princess, but I named them and I kind of gave a little bit more backstory. One of them's definitely an orphan. I'm so sorry. I'm really struggling with the name of my princess. I know naming the main character, for me at least, is always the hardest part. I came up with everybody else's names so easily, and the princess is difficult. I always enjoy the nicknameable nature of character names. I think it's fun because then you get to pick and choose who's allowed to use their nickname or who does use the nickname, etc. And part of me, as I'm going through this, I like the name I've already chosen. I like the idea of Edith to Edie. People could call her Ed, people could call her Eddie. You could play around with it a lot depending on who's interacting with her. But there's something that I just don't love. And so I might do a little bit more name research. Sometimes I will go to some of those like name generator, like fantasy name generator websites. But other times I will think about words that already exist and throw some different letters in there and see what happens. So I think I have to play around with that a little bit. I also am realizing that there's some more plot heavy stuff I need to work on before I can really solidify a couple of these characters. Specifically, I need to decide the politics. I have most of that down. I just am not 100% certain if we are currently at war. And that makes a big difference. Are we currently at war or are we about to go into war? Because that can mean different things for my 2 characters who are gonna be kind of like army, maybe palace guards, something of the sort. Have they been like somewhere out on the front lines, or are they just trained to protect the palace? That makes a difference in their vibes and also in just like their background and their backstory. So I might do just a little bit of thinking on that real quick, so then I can dive into some of these adventuring buddies that I just came up with. And then I need to decide on the name of my princess because I can't keep putting that off. I now want to go over a couple other character profiling techniques, tips, questions. I'm going to link this document below, but 5-ish years ago maybe, Caitlin Argo, I will plug her channel below. She's currently not making videos, but I sense a comeback. Shh. She made a character profile document that kind of helps give you some more questions to ask yourself about the characters you're creating. And I want to go through this and see if there are any that really pertain to my story and that I think could be helpful and that I haven't already asked myself. And I'm going to scroll through and then I'm going to follow up with a couple of big questions that I think are important. Okay, this is one that I have already thought about for some of my characters, but not all of them. What kind of parents does your character have? Are they strict and domineering? Are they even in the picture? List 3 personality traits your character has because of how they were treated by their parents. And I think that's a very important topic to discuss because as people, we are very aggressively formed by how we were raised. Regardless of what situation that is, it has a lasting impact on our lives. And of course, that would be the case in a book with these characters. I do have 2 like drastically juxtaposing parenting involved with some of my characters. My princess, as of right now, I believe, has both of her parents, and she was raised by both of her parents in like a pretty healthy and safe environment. And then the lady's maid that comes in was an orphan and was raised by somebody else who did an okay job. And I think the ways in which they both view their parents and view those figures in their life and how their childhood was make a large impact on how they will interact with each other in this book. I like this one, especially in like a fantasy adventuring book. List some items your character generally carries with them at all times. Give a sentence for each explaining why this is important for them to have every day. I think I will have a couple that are like weapons. Oh, you know, so-and-so always has his dagger with him. Or like my princess won't be able to carry her staff with her everywhere she goes, but she probably has another weapon on her. Or things that are sentimental. Like, does someone wear a necklace that reminds them of someone? Or is there a journal that they like to keep notes in? I'm gonna think about that one a little more because I believe when my characters have to go on their quest, it is not by choice. And there's a very good chance that they can only really carry what they already have on their backs. And so what they carry with them every day will end up being quite important to the nature of most of the story. Something I've been working on a little bit, but I would like to dive deeper in, is each of my characters' personal arcs and what their own goals are. Because all of that is going to change due to the plot of the story. They're going to have to make some very tough decisions and they're going to realize that their lives as they know it are never going to be the same. And it's going to change all of the goals and the hopes that they had for their future. And I think some of them are going to find a lot of strength in this unknown and a lot of excitement in the opportunity to be bigger, to be a part of something, to be bigger than what they once thought that they could be. But for others, I think it'll be a much tougher adjustment. Okay, my last one I'm going to point out from here that I think is fun. Where would your character choose to stand in a crowded room of a party? Are they finding refuge along a wall, thriving in the center of the action, searching for a door? I'll try to have some kind of ball or gathering or big party or something in this story. I'm not entirely sure if it'll call for it, but I feel like you can't have a fantasy novel without at least one big event. I think not only can you take this question very literally and decide where are they going to be when they're at this party, who are they interacting with, but also it can tell you a lot about how a character is going to react in other larger situations. Do they like to be in the center of attention? Are they bold? Are they outgoing? Would they prefer to be by a wall? Is it because they're shy or is it because they're observant and they like to be a little bit more reserved, or they just like to have an idea of everything that's going on, the wider scope of things, rather than being in the middle of it where they can't get a good view of their surroundings? Or do they even like parties to begin with? I think the relationship to royalty and how people feel about royalty is going to come into play because our main character is a princess and she cares a lot about her kingdom, but I think we find out that there are other things that she cares about more. Okay, I think this is where I'm going to end this video. I'm feeling much better about the characters that I do already have. I need to work more on the family of my princess because they're going to be more in this book than the family of some of the other characters. And then I really just need to get some names solidified. I keep talking about like just, oh, the capital of this place or this realm by this name. And I need to start naming some other kingdoms and naming some of these ancillary people that we're not going to meet until much later in the book. And some of these people I need to decide how much character work I want to do on them, because like, you know, I've decided that there's going to be some royals from a different kingdom that they meet like 3/4 of the way through the book. And if that's the case, how much do I need to know about them in this current moment? I think I need to know enough to know what plays into the political mess that is going on, but I don't know if we need to know them personally, especially because our characters, our narrator, doesn't know them personally. And so part of me is like, okay, maybe I'll find that out when my characters do. Or once I get close to that point, we'll kind of circle back to the character building worksheets and see if there's any more information that I need. I struggle so much between wanting to be such a plotter, but then realizing that I use plotting as procrastination, but then also knowing that I can't pants. I cannot just write. I need to have an idea of what I'm doing. And so I'm trying to do this kind of middle ground thing where I'm gonna give myself a decently detailed outline. Part of me says I'm not going to go chapter by chapter, but I might end up going chapter by chapter. Right now I have my book divided into quarters, and so I might go in and divide those into a couple more sections, and we'll see how the chapters form themselves out, because I feel like chapter by chapter for me feels a little too constricted, but I do need to get the outline to be decently specific. I'm going to have a video where I'm working on my outline, and at that point, I will have an idea of what I need to go back and do before I start writing, because all this work I've been doing is so I can create a good outline. And I think now I need to create the outline to know where my holes are at, because I have a lot of information on quite a few of my characters and also on the history, some of the lore, the politics of the current moment. And so now I need to really dive into what is this story going to be, so I know what else I need before I start writing. But we're writing soon, and I'm very excited about that, and I hope you're excited to join me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a like or subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you next time. Fun shit.